Welcome back for another helping of oysters, clams, and cockles presented by Bolin Media. I am Ross Bolin, joined as always by Mr. Barrett Dudley, here today to discuss Season 4, Episode 4 of Succession, titled Honeymoon States. Barrett, to get started, how did you feel about Episode 4 overall?
Oh, man. It felt really good. But at this point in the show, I don't think I'm going to come out of any episode not feeling that way. Every character is just so fully fleshed out and knows themselves so well that just like now that we're basically in this run where we'll continuously be like putting them together in various matchups and variations, it's just going to be like just awesome to see. Love the kids still getting to riff, off of each other in this one. It was awesome to be back in Logan's house, in his New York apartment, which has been, a great backdrop for many scenes over the last 4 seasons here.
His house-sized New York apartment.
His house-sized New York apartment, and
it's quite large.
I would like to get in on that bidding between the 60 and the 70 millions.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, it seems like a good price.
Just Connor he threw out the 63, but what if I wanted to come in at 63.5?
It's not even worth a bidding war at that point, I suppose.
Right? But no, I mean, I loved the episode. Thought it had a lot of really good beats, and I hope Kendall doesn't have to pull out the strap on.
Yeah, we all do. I saw some people with the take that this was the same old Succession, and I have to say, like, as a guy who has made that complaint himself several times, this episode did not qualify. Like, that is an incorrect take. This one introduced enough new, interesting angles and complications that, like, while it fit the format of classic Succession shit.
Yeah,
it felt fresh and exciting. Like, I was good with this one.
So one of the things about dropping the big reveal and moving on from Logan in episode 3, is that it does reset the board a little bit.
Absolutely,
and it does bring you back to square one in a way where you like where the succession of it all is kind of renewed. But giving yourself the runway of 7 episodes, I think, gives us plenty of time to kind of go back to some of the kind of the staples before we get into whatever it is that the show's going to say in the last 2 to 3 episodes.
Right.
So this is, and I'm not surprised to hear that was a take that this was just like same old Succession, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like, it's the last time that we're going to see some of these things. And so I'm okay with it because it does feel different enough. And, when we get scenes like the 3 kids closing the doors and deciding that Roman and Ken are going to step up because that's the best shape for them.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's excruciating to watch them do that dance and say the right things and say that it's different this time and that they are all on the same page and that everybody's going to be across everything and that it's them. They're going to do this together.
No fucking.
No, nobody's going to fuck anybody.
Yeah.
And you just know that that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty unlikely.
And by the end of the episode, it's already beginning to unravel.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's just like it's I think that they're putting us through the paces this one last time before the final number.
Yeah, we can't have a full-blown 4th of July fireworks show every single week, folks. That's not how it works. And as far as like a board reset goes, I did think they introduced enough new stuff in this episode so that it wasn't just the same old thing, which we'll obviously get into in a second. But yeah, they had to find a shape for this thing.
Yeah,
I think they found a shape here.
And I think one of the new shapes that they found is that the dynamics have changed.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Like this was like the kids, the 3 main kids, held weight. Even though they were constantly at odds with Logan, they held weight because of Logan.
Right.
Now, none of the other key players, the old guard, as they're named in this episode, None of them have to take the kids seriously.
They don't have to even fawn respect.
They do not have to they do not have to show any respect to them. They can treat them like more as they see them, as they perceive them.
Like almost at their, like as, I don't want to say as equals necessarily, because I don't think they respect them as equals, but it's sort of how they treat them in this, it's not like daddy's not around anymore, right? So you're just one of us in this, pit fighting for the power now.
Yeah, and I mean, much in the same way that Carl tells Tom, that he lost the one guy that was like standing up for him and going to bat for him. The kids have lost the one guy that made them valuable, that made them worth taking seriously.
Yeah. Let's dive into the specifics of honeymoon states. So we cold open this week with Kendall sitting on the floor of, I believe it's his penthouse suite, with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders, and he looks like absolute hell. Like morning is going well for this guy. Roman, on the other hand, looks spry and is brushing his teeth in a way that makes you think, maybe he's okay.
Quick question for you here.
Yeah.
Do you, in your toothbrushing routine, are you a bend down and drink straight from the faucet kind of guy?
Yeah, I am.
Are you really? Okay.
Yeah.
So that hit for you?
I'm kind of a disgusting teeth brusher, man. Like I'm a bend down and drink from the faucet guy. I also routinely get like I'm aggressive, like way too aggressive with it. Every time I go to the dentist, they're like, "Hey, man, maybe chill out. Like let the toothbrush do the work for you." Because I've got one of those ones that like it does some motion or whatever.
Right.
But I end up with like toothpaste on the mirror. I let it run down my chin, dribble down my chin like queso while I'm brushing my teeth, which everybody knows is not good for your skin.
It's a visceral experience.
It is a visceral experience for me, much like Ted Cruz eating queso, and it's just so I identified with that.
Okay, I thought it was he had the little the high faucet, so you can kind of do that a little bit easier.
Yeah, I don't really,
but you just bend down.
all the way down there in my peasant sink.
Why? Like he did that. Why don't you just use your hands?
Or get a cup.
Make a little hand cup.
I feel like the wealthy would have a cup, right? Like they get a new cup every day for their sink.
The help, the staff.
Sure.
They put a new cup there every day.
Absolutely.
And then also notable that he was I think he was hipster almost with his toothbrush selection. It looked like a bamboo number.
Oh, really?
Something very natural.
Oh, okay.
With like the handle and everything. But I would have expected Roman, a guy, he's got a lot of upkeep, a lot of maintenance.
Sure.
At least seems, very gelled and very manicured in a way.
Yeah.
Surprised he didn't have like a sonic hair going on.
Right, like a giant sonic hair. Almost sexual in nature.
But yes, moving on.
Okay, so later in the episode, Roman says he pre-grieved. And just to kind of get to his general spryness here at the beginning of the episode, like what did you make of Roman's demeanor here in episode 4? Like comparative to the other kids who are very clearly sad in mourning.
So I think Roman, maybe more than any one of the kids, is the most out of touch with his own emotions.
I think that's a fair statement, yeah.
I think that he doesn't really know how to process. I don't think he knows how to deal. I don't think he knows how to tap into what he thinks he's feeling. None of them are very good at it. No,
none of them are pros.
But I think he's the worst. And even one take that I heard over the last couple of weeks, we bumped on it last week about how the language, the fucky fucks and like all that last week seemed kind of like
diggy dick and fucky
forced
fuck.
or not or just like it felt weirder.
Yeah.
And one of the takes that I heard on that was that basically like that was that episode was kind of the end of something, and they were kind of out of language. They were kind of out of ways to process and ways to put it. And the clever jokes had kind of run out.
Oh, sure.
In a way.
That makes sense.
And so it's
I like that.
And so that's I thought back to that with Roman here, who has pre-grieved now and is feeling very light on his feet. Just that like that he doesn't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
And so he's just buried it deep down, and it probably will, as he alludes to, hit him like a freight train. Train coming.
Trains a coming.
Trains a coming.
I thought I invented the concept of pre-mourning, as I called it. He calls it pre-grieving, but with regard to pets and parents. Yes, I used to talk about this on RBP, and I'm going to continue taking credit for it, even though he brings it up in this episode.
Yeah.
Shiv starts the episode in bed in her pajamas, and that's when her phone rings. It's her doctor Dr. Sharon Hasford, who wants to discuss Shiv's results. Thank you, subtitles, for the full doctor name. The doctor says, it's a good result. The journey we went on with the amniocentesis after what the blood test showed us, everything looks healthy. And at that point in the call, I'm like, oh man, did Shiv think she had cancer? Because I don't know what amniocentesis is, right? I'm not a fucking MD. And then she says, and you're still well, no spotting, no bleeding. And then she also tells Shiv that one of her nurses will reach out to schedule her 20-week exam. And you've got to be fucking kidding me, Barrett. Yeah. Shiv is pregnant.
Shiv is pregnant.
After all of the serious statements disguised as jokes saying no more horrifying pregnancies in my favorite HBO shows, and flat out saying there is no way they can make Shiv pregnant because Sarah Snook is now pregnant in real life, and that would be too weird.
I think
this shit is happening.
I don't know exactly. I'm sure that we can suss out the timelines, but I think they wrote this to include Sarah Snook's pregnancy in the show.
It's possible.
I feel like it was probably getting hard to hide.
I mean, the thing is that it's like at the premiere of Succession season 4, she looks like she's maybe 6 months. Maybe a little more.
Okay.
But I don't see how that would. I think it might be totally coincidental. That they had her because it had to have been at least a year and a half ago that they're filming this thing, right? I feel like.
Yeah, I think they were. Yeah. I think they were filming last year, last summer, last fall.
So this is going to be a mess.
Or last summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, on to the big picture. The big news: Shiv is in fact pregnant. Did you do any diving into amniocentesis, any of that type of stuff?
No.
Because we've obviously heard a lot of talk about the embryos and the eggs,
right?
That she and Tom may or may not be putting on ice.
They talked about freezing things,
but I don't know if they ever followed through with that. And then in last season, she and Tom do have the hate sex that one time. But then also, what season was it? Was it last season that she has sex with that other random dude?
That she had an affair?
With the actor guy?
I can't remember if that was season 3 or 2.
That had to have been 2, because I don't...
It was a while back.
Because Laura mentioned that, and I didn't even remember that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's Tom's. I don't think there's any doubt there.
Yes, bringing Tom back into the fold here, as... Suddenly having a little bit of a lifeline, I think makes the most sense. So my guesstimation is that this is Tom's child,
right?
But it's possible that it's somebody else's. But the way that they continue to interact, which we'll touch on here again in a minute, does lead me to believe that it is Tom's.
You and I talked about the fact that Tom, and it comes up again in this episode in a few minutes, that he's screwed. That this was his protector. He doesn't have anybody else now. That it's very, very likely. In fact, I would just go so far as to say that it happened. He told Greg, leak this information about Logan and tell people I was in the room just so it would make him look like an option as his successor. And he was trying to get his foot, get a foothold so that he's not just out in the cold once, because, as Carl very delicately puts it to him, his wife doesn't even like him. He's got nobody left. So I feel like this pregnancy is, like you put it, his lifeline. This gives him something, and really even furthers the notion that these two are probably not going to get divorced. that they're kind of stuck with each other, and they deserve each other in a way. So yeah, all kidding aside, I'd like to congratulate the happy couple of Shiv and Tom and wish them well in perpetuating their cycle of uber wealth and matching misery. So that was a huge reveal. Obviously, it was kind of nice into the cold open. I was kind of surprised they did another cold open, but it was worth it. Then after the opening title sequence, Kendall gets dropped off at his dad's place for the wake. This is a wake, right? It's not a funeral.
Yeah.
Pretty sure this is the wake. It just gets so mixed up with business that it's like a wake and a board meeting.
Right.
And a presidential candidate is rolling through and shit.
That is, honestly, now that's a knock on Succession that I've heard before, is that all of these things just so happen to match up so merrily.
Yeah.
There's always a massive group event at the same time as a board meeting, as the same time as something, as the same time as, it all coincides too perfectly.
Yeah.
And obviously that's the magic of movie making and TV making.
That's how they fit all this into the show, right?
That's how they fit all this in. So it's a weird... I like the way that they do this, because it's it's so much fun to have everybody in the house at the same time for this one thing. And oh yeah, we got to do the business stuff over here in the back rooms and close the doors and do all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So it kind of adds the hijinks element to it a little bit, which I quite like.
I do too. So when Kendall shows up, there's a team of paparazzi waiting outside, like snapping photos, which at first I was like, would there really be all these paps out here? Like, but yes, it's, as if Rupert Murdoch died, there would be paparazzi outside of his place trying to get pictures of who was coming and going, right? Because it would be the biggest of the bigwigs in terms of media and politics. So Kendall walks past Hugo, who's talking on the phone in the lobby, and Hugo seems extremely distressed. He's on the phone with his daughter, as we find out later, okay? And he says, you fucked me. You fucked me right in the ass here. What you've done, Juliet, is you've taken a strap on, and you fucked me right in the ass, yeah? And Kendall's like kind of half listening as he proceeds on to the elevator. He gets upstairs into his dad's place. And
a hard conversation to not overhear.
Yeah, it's pretty distinct.
Also, what a way to talk to your kid, your daughter there.
Well, apparently, like as he puts it later, they don't have much of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Which just really makes you wonder how he screwed the pooch this badly. Maybe he was like kicking her, like throwing her a bone in an effort to try to ease the tensions in their relationship or something. But we'll get more to Hugo later. Kendall gets upstairs to his dad's place, and guess who is waiting right by the elevator? It is Miss Marcia, who was shopping in Milan forever, and now she is back. I felt good about this because I may have been wrong about Shiv getting pregnant, but I was right about Marcia coming back into the fold.
Yeah, I think you knew Marcia had to come back. My prediction that she would be a more of a wild card dropped in later episodes was obviously incorrect. This makes way more sense. If you were going to bring her back, she would be right back in the mix to start. Look, they never got divorced. That's something that we know.
Yes.
And she, we start the entire series off with Logan putting her in a position of great power within the company.
Right.
We never saw any of that change on paper, I don't believe.
And it doesn't come up in this episode, which I found to be odd. Like, I'm pretty confident the argument in season 1 was that, like, in the case of Logan's death, she received another board vote, that she would have 2, giving her double voting power.
Yeah, and she still might. I mean,
we don't know.
We don't know if that ever. If I don't think we ever really learn if that paperwork goes all the way through.
If that even went through, who knows? And I'm based on Logan not even completing his will.
Right.
I think it's fairly unlikely it did ever get made official.
But she's still the wife. She's still the next of kin. That's why That's why she is getting things like the house that they shared together.
Right.
Which is worth in between 60 and 70 millions.
Millions.
And
Cash money.
She's right here. She is orchestrating the entire thing. She is the matriarch, and
she's on top of this shit, man.
She's on top of it. She carries so much power.
Yeah,
just she's a great presence.
She's
on the
awesome.
Show.
Yeah, I love her.
And I described her afterwards as a succubus.
Yeah. Kendall asks her when she got in, like almost a little bit. Disrespectfully, like what are you doing here? Sort of, you know what I mean?
He's caught off guard. Yeah.
You can tell him and the other siblings are kind of peeved that she's just stepped back in and acts like she was there the whole time and like they hadn't seen each other in 7 weeks and all that.
She's letting it be known, whether true or false, that they had intimate conversations every evening.
Every morning and afternoon they spoke, so she came as soon as she heard, and she says, quote, "We were very close. It was complicated, but we spoke intimately every evening," which she was really, laying it on thick there. Like,
yeah, she's much in the way that Tom is kind of like going around, like like I was here, I was there, like, like don't forget about me. That's kind of what I feel like she's doing. She's like letting every single person that she can know. She just like filling in the gaps. They're like, oh yeah, we were talking every night. Did you know that?
Yeah, I took what Marcia says here to Kendall as basically like the starter pistol for every single character we've ever met trying to get their place,
right? Like
get their piece of the Logan Roy pie. Did you think there was any truth to what she was saying? Like, do you think her and Logan actually kept up with each other, or that they were talking every night and evening, or is this strictly a power and position play by Marcia? It's hard to tell.
It is hard to tell. Shiv makes a note here, kind of an offhand remark, that they hadn't seen each other for 7 weeks.
Right.
Not that long.
Not even 2 months.
We definitely need somebody out there, some entrepreneurial and enterprising soul to like put together a massive timeline of the entire show. Because like I don't actually have a good feeling for how much time is supposed to have passed
since the beginning of the show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, maybe 7 weeks ago was like not that long ago, and maybe that goes all the way back to season 3 or something. I don't know. Anyway, so they were at least still in some type of communication, but the fact that they were potentially talking every single day and night
seems unlikely. Considering his relationship with Carrie, especially, right?
Right. Like, how would he? What is he sneaking off to the bathroom?
Marcia's talking him off while he's in the toilet. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless, the parasites are swarming. Sid, who was going to be fired by Logan as well, she is present. Like, it's really quick. You have to be paying really close attention.
Yeah, she says.
But she says,
you can hear her voice. That's
yeah,
for sure.
exactly.
And the other guy that says something is Falconhead.
Right.
The Hitler sympathizer.
Oh yeah. But Sid is there even. She says sorry to Kendall for his loss, and we see all the old guard, Frank, Carl, and Jerry, eating at this table in their own little room over there, right? Yep. So Kendall meets his sister Shiv and brother Roman in a separate room, and we get this lingering look at Roman's watch with the blue face matching his shirt, which I think is just supposed to give us an indication of what time it is. It's 10:15 a.m. when we get that shot. But at first I was like, what is that? Is it his dad's watch? What's the meaning of this watch? I don't think it was anything more than just the time. Ken asks the others, what's up with Marcia? And even he says, where's Carrie? He expected her to be there. She deserves to be there even a little bit. It was just interesting to see the level of respect that at least Kendall and Roman seem to give the mistress position, right? Roman says that she's in Marcia's trunk inside of an anaconda, inside of a sarcophagus. Yeah. Tom enters the residence and he has a choice. You can turn left toward your wife or turn right toward the old guard, and you know which way he goes, Barrett. We find out the board call is in an hour to pick a new top dog, a new CEO, so Frank invites the rest of the old guard along with Tom to take a look at the China. He tries to get some more privacy, right?
Yes.
To discuss this whole thing, and Frank says they want to make an announcement today stating who is taking over in the interim, and I get the impression that between episode 3 and 4, maybe an extra day has passed.
Yeah, it's pretty
not a
soon
lot
after.
of time has gone by here.
Right.
But they want somebody set to take over in the interim for Monday.
It's still the weekend.
Yes, exactly. We have not even made it to Monday. Yeah. They're looking forward to setting this up so that Monday they're ready to rock. And Carl says, and here's my position. I wonder if we don't want to take control of the plane here, which was just an interesting hijacking metaphor, right? That's a hijacking metaphor. And they just have to decide who they'd want to appoint out of their group. So Carolina throws Jerry in because she's done the job before.
She's done the interim job before.
Right?
Yep.
Frank says Carl, the CFO, might be considered the natural interim.
Yep.
And then Tom throws his hat in the ring and gets absolutely roasted off the face of the earth.
If there is a ring, I would throw my do you have the line written down?
No.
About?
It's I'd like to throw my hat. I think this is the third time he's used this metaphor too, throwing his hat in the ring for something. But Carl says, as a friend, I just want to tell you how this would go with the board. He says, the negative case would go, you're a clumsy interloper and no one trusts you. The only guy pulling for you is dead, and now you're just married to the ex-boss's daughter, and she doesn't even like you, and you are fair and squarely fucked. Tom responds, Jesus, Carl. Great stuff here.
Well, maybe the best scene of the entire episode. Carl's not a guy. Carl's kind of a punching bag. I feel like he's kind of, he's the butt of a lot of jokes.
Yeah, historically.
I feel like, but within that group, it's kind of like Jerry and Frank are kind of the two head honchos, and then you've got Carolina over here constantly doing bad PR shit.
Yeah.
And then Carl's been kind of the, you can land a joke or two at Carl's expense. And so it was interesting to I feel like that was kind of added to the level that Tom currently resides, right? He's even lower than Carl, because Carl just took him the fuck down.
Well, and like you said earlier, the dynamics have changed here, right? Even you can tell Carl's he's feeling himself.
He's feeling himself. Yes.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah, the vibe has changed. So Roman points out that Logan was going to fire half of that room, as he puts it, and asks if people know that and if they should get the word out. But Shiv kind of shoots him down we don't want this to be a total shit show.
Yeah.
That would not be good for the value of the company, etc. Then Mattson calls Roman, and the kids decide to let it ring out while they do 5.
They got to do 5.
Get their ducks in a row. Yeah, which backfires. Because when they call him back, Oscar answers instead of Mattson, and Mattson like refuses to be on the call, but you can tell he's like 2 feet away, and they're like laughing at the kids kind of, and like it's just they have no respect for the fact that this old man died.
No.
It's their annual retreat, Barrett. They can't just cancel it.
They can't cancel it.
You can't reschedule it. The whole company's going to it. So, fuck your dad. But yeah, what did you make of how Mattson played this? I kind of to be expected, right? Like,
yeah,
they've been dragging this dude along, trying to get more money out of him. Now the old man croaks. They've lost all their hand, and what is he going to just give it back to them?
Yeah,
no,
they've got no hand.
Yeah, no hand.
I can't wait for the Mattson stuff. I think Alexander Skarsgård is perfect for this role as this just like asshole Swedish tech CEO.
Yeah, and we haven't gotten that much of him. I mean,
it
was fairly heavy in the back half of season 3, but
so I can't wait to get out there to Sweden.
The Swede.
So but yeah, it's a risk you run when you stop to do 5.
God, you got to answer those phone calls, man, right when they come in. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. As the owner of a small business who loves binge-watching TV and doesn't know how to cook, too often I end up getting unhealthy takeout. Not anymore, thanks to Factor. This spring, you need nutritious, convenient meals to energize you for warmer, active days and keep you on track reaching your goals. Or let's be real, sometimes you need something healthy to eat while you enjoy your favorite shows from the couch. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast while ready-to-eat meals are delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and tackle everything on your to-do list. Too busy to cook this spring? With Factor, skip the trip to the grocery store and skip the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy, then get back outside and soak up the warmer weather, or stay on the couch and enjoy that next episode of Succession. Want to cut back on takeout? Get Factor instead. Not only is Factor cheaper than takeout, but meals are ready faster than restaurant delivery in just 2 minutes. No more waiting an hour and a half for the delivery guy who ends up canceling after deciding to eat your food in his car. Head to factormeals.com/OCC50 and use code OCC50 to get 50% off your first box. That's code OCC50. OCC50 at factormeals.com, F-A-C-T-O-R meals.com/OCC50 to get 50% off your first box. So Connor shows up with Willa, and Marcia congratulates Willa by saying, "Look how far you've come." And Willa responds, "Yeah, well, look at both of us, right?" Yeah. Almost kind of like, bitch, you're from the gutter too.
It's a clapback. Yeah. It's a definite clapback. And speaking of people that are walking with a little bit more confidence.
Hey, Willa.
Willa, who we talked about this a few weeks ago. Willa's always been the one. Like even when she was also the butt of a lot of jokes. She still had the fortitude to kind of stand up for herself a little bit, take jabs here and there. But now that she is like officially part of the family, I think she's got a glow about her. She's walking with a little bit more confidence, and she's not afraid to subtly clap back at Marcia here.
Now she legally belongs.
She legally
right?
belongs. She's landed this spot.
Yeah, Yeah. Very interesting dynamic with Willa in this episode for sure. Her mom is just everywhere now.
Her mom,
brought her mom to check out the fucking
plate's getting heavy.
House-sized apartment they're buying. Connor tells Marcia they're going to head out next week for a little trip they've got planned out, and you're like, oh, good, a nice honeymoon. You're probably going to, the Maldives or something, Italy, across the pond, who knows? Nope, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Pennsylvania. The honeymoon states, Barrett, as Willa calls them.
Right.
He was turning their honeymoon into a campaigning trip to maintain his 1%.
You got to maintain the 1% is the thing about that.
Yeah.
Don't want to dip below the 1.
Yeah. Then, as we talked about already, Connor, not so slyly brings up the potential purchase of his father's former giant suite up here atop this massive building. And him and Marcia agree with a spit handshake on a deal for him to buy his dad's place for $63 million. $63 million. And I saw people arguing with me on TikTok last week that the reason that Connor and Willa's wedding is on a Friday afternoon and is kind of bunk is that he had spent all his money on his campaign. Yeah, did he? Did he spend all his money on his campaign? He's throwing 63 mil out like it's nothing to buy this place. So I don't think money is the issue.
It's not. It's definitely not. Don't forget that when he broached the idea of dropping another 100 mil into the campaign, his response to like, well, you'd still be rich, right? And he was like, yeah, just with $100 million
minus 100
less,
mil.
minus 100 mil. Like all of these kids they're basically billionaires already.
Yeah, I think they're probably in the single digits, right?
Through net worth.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so 100 mil and even 63 mil is a massive chunk of change, but they're all in the echelon where like it's just a bunch of numbers. Like I don't think it actually
numbers on a screen,
matters a whole bunch, like how much they spend. And so 63 is a lot, but I think he's got it. I think he's good for it. The funny part to me about this was the fact that like it was just kind of interesting for him to even be in the position to have to buy it in a way. You know what I mean? Like
I think he was savvy knowing that she was going to sell it
because of the dynamics of how this works. I think it just kind of added to the awkward situation of like when you have a parent that remarries. And how that all goes down, where it's like, well, you're like, you're the kid, you're the blood here, but suddenly there is, speaking of Tom, there's kind of an interloper who's suddenly actually more legally kind of binded to
almost an usurper,
the entire inheritance.
Yeah.
And especially in the big things like property and some of these big assets that kind of like almost like legally just go to next of kin. And I know you can write wills and shit like that, but Marcia would fight that to the bone, no question about it.
I mean, I think this may be part of the reason she agreed so quickly to the, like we said, well, why didn't she, what if somebody wanted to come in at 63.5? I think he is safely assuming that she's probably the one who has the rights to the apartment because she lived there,
and
right?
She knows she does, and she already knows she's going to sell it.
Right. So before anybody can like come in and screw this up or do any of the arguing like you're talking about, she's like, I'm just going to unload this. Yep. And just to touch on Connor's wedding very quickly, we got into this a lot, and we got into it even more on Patreon last week. But my final answer on like what was the deal with his wedding on a Friday afternoon and why was it the way it was, look, he's trying to make headlines, right? He spoke about this plainly. Having it before the news cycle for that week ends gives more time for it to make the Friday evening news, right? So if the wedding is at 7 p.m., nobody's hearing about that until next week.
Right.
So he gets it in where it's like a twofold win for him as far as campaigning goes in his, brain.
Yeah.
In his mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, 63 millions. So Frank brings Carl up to a room, and this is probably the most important part of the episode. He tells him that he has had a very worrying piece of paper passed his way that was in Logan's safe, which I just found to be kind of disgusting. Like, if I have a fucking safe and I die and I haven't opened it, somebody blows it up with dynamite, right? You don't get to just go rifle through it and like get all my shit out of there. That's crazy.
I know.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Damn. Got to move my safe, Barrett.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. You can't leave your will in the safe.
Yeah, no, you got to give that shit to your lawyer.
You're right. And in this case, what I believe that Frank is saying is that he probably did have the code to the safe because he is the executor of the will.
Right.
Or one of the executors of the will.
And like, we don't get to see this piece of paper. But Carl immediately asks if it might just go away. It might be lost. I hope it isn't, but what if your hand went a little wobbly and a draft took it away and it got flushed down a toilet by mistake? Kidding, of course, right? But this was the important line to me. He said, like, Carl is handed this piece of paper by Frank. He reads it, you see the reaction on his face, and he says, we're not going to let the little princess screw things up, right, Frank? Who's the little princess, Barrett?
I believe that he says little princes.
He says little princess.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a subtitle read?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, no, it was my initial hearing with my bat ears, and then I rewatched this more, because like I had this argument with my wife. I go, after the episode ends, I'm like, did you catch the line about who Logan had actually appointed to be his successor? It's Shiv. He chose Shiv. That's the little princess, but they don't want her to screw things up. Now, this is my read. I know there are going to be different reads, and this is going to be a big argument from this episode. My wife said the same thing as you. I thought he said little princes. So we turned on subtitles, rewound the episode, and looked at it, and it's Little Princess. So with that in mind, do you agree with me?
No.
You don't think it's Shiv?
No.
Huh. Who do you think it is?
Well, if it was Shiv, then Shiv would be on the piece of paper.
They don't show this document, the one that they have this back and forth about the toilet with, never gets shown the light of day. It's fucking gone. They bring out this other document with Kendall's name on it with the debatable underline cross out for strategic purposes. I have a lot of takes on. Do you want to go a little further before we dive into like the gist of this? Okay. So right here, Carl says, I want out. If Jerry's going to block me, right? If she's going to screw me and not let me be the one who takes over in the interim, I want to get out. I want to retire. I'm halfway in on a Greek island with my brother-in-law. And
they want the Gojo sale to go through.
Right. So that they can all get paid.
That's the golden parachute for all these people, yeah.
But Carl's the only one who's directly saying, like, I want to get out of this. Frank is still there. Jerry is still there. And as a triumvirate, and just the old guard in general, and you can include Tom in this if you want, I think the strategy is you get these idiot kids in the interim. They're not going to last. The board is going to remove them. Now, if you let Shiv take over, this is why my argument is that Shiv is the little princess. I think she's the most capable, as I've always argued on this show, of actually doing something decent with the company. If she's removed from the equation, which ends up happening by the end of the episode, and these two morons or one or the other of Kendall and Roman is allowed to take over, it puts these other people who are vying for the top, it puts them in a position to perhaps land there once these kids are removed, because everybody knows Kendall and Roman are morons that are not fit to run this company. Even if they get the gig in the interim, they will be ousted by the board because they are idiots. And then who's left to be elected next? One of these people. So I think this was all, and it's complicated, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out over the coming weeks. And I'm not saying I'm 100% right. This is just my read currently. That the piece of paper they end up showing the kids is an older draft. One that names Kendall with the debatable underline crossout situation because they know that draft causes a ton of issues for the kids, and the more conflict they can sow within these children, the better off they all are longer term. So it causes inner turmoil. It puts these people, the old heads, the fucking gray beards, what does Tom call them? Gray hairs, in a better position for one of them to become CEO themselves if the kids blow it, which they now will. So that was my read, because they keep bringing up like this was maybe 4 years old. Then there are penciled in addendums that have no, timestamp on them, that we don't know when this was done. So it led me to think like, all right, Frank clearly has other drafts of Logan's will, and they have discarded this one that named the little princess, who I'll just assume is Shiv, because they don't think that works for them. They can't find a shape for themselves there.
Okay.
And they have inserted this one that causes mayhem instead. Because if the only two options are one of us gets elected right now by the board, which they know is not going to happen, especially when Kendall and Logan bust in with Stewie and they've got an overwhelming amount of votes here, and Shiv on their side, they have to take the back seat for the time being, but if they get these idiots in charge for now, then inevitably it will be one of them when the other shoe drops. So that's my take.
Okay. Obviously, I need to do a rewatch to look into all this further. I did think that it was interesting, and the one thing that flagged for me was they're talking about all this, kind of foul play with the piece of paper.
Yeah.
They're joking about it, I should say, not being serious at all.
In a comic manner.
And it's just in a comic manner. They bring in Jerry, they show her the piece of paper, and then it seems like the paper's going to go away, and then it doesn't. Then they bring
there's a piece of paper.
Then they bring in the kids and show them the piece of paper. So I was like,
a piece of paper.
So it was interesting from me just watching, in real time, and be like, oh, I guess they made the honest decision to show them the piece of paper and just loop them into the fold. So I hear what you're saying about them potentially swapping the piece of paper. Some immediate bumps that I have in your own particular theory.
Yeah.
I think goal number one for all of them, for every member of the old guard, is to make the Gojo sale go through.
Yes.
So if they are worried about anything, I think it's that Shiv, that they would know that Shiv was the one that wanted to push back on the deal.
Right. Okay.
Right. With the
and ask for more money
with the Sandys, and asked for more money, and she was the one campaigning for Roman and Kendall to get on her side to try to push on the deal.
Most likely to screw that up for them.
Which could potentially screw the whole deal up for them.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that it's that they, because one thing that I feel like has long been said about this Gojo deal is that everybody that's part of Waystar is screwed once Gojo buys it. It's going to be chopped up for parts, folded into Gojo. All of those people are probably done for.
Right.
So I think really they just want their nut. Maybe they and I think we're definitely going to see some of this in the Sweden episodes. I think maybe everybody is going to have these sit downs with Matsson to try to find a shape for themselves in the new Gojo Waystar.
Right.
Because they still want to be on the teat a little bit. And so that's something to look out for. But I'm not sure if there was a play like that, I feel like it's probably more to make sure that the Gojo sale goes through rather than to like look out for themselves as future CEOs, because Matsson's going to be the CEO.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. You're just furthering this. Yeah, taking it further than I had. So it's like, yes, I think you're absolutely right that that is perhaps the other angle here, that the whole thing is just about making sure they get this deal through so that they all get their package, as Carl calls it, and they can retire,
they
right?
Want their package, yeah.
I mean, it's not like they don't have money already. Carl's half in on a fucking Greek island, but this would give them enormous wealth. They'd make a lot more money if they can get this Gojo deal through. They think Shiv has the potential to screw that up for them.
Yeah.
And they can't have that, and that's why they ditch the version that has her name on it in favor of the one that has Kendall's name on it, causes all this confusion and infighting and whatnot.
Okay, so do you think that the line drawn under/through Kendall's name is forged?
I don't think it really matters in the end. I mean, when I first saw it, I went, oh, he scratched out Kendall's name. And then the more they show it to us, I'm like, well, the first half is underlined, because it's kind of like it starts out underneath the first name Kendall, and then it goes up through Kendall Logan Roy, right? Like so the Logan Roy part.
Yeah, and so when they have Kendall kind of focusing on that and looking back at it on his phone, it's torturing him because he doesn't know what his dad actually meant whenever he wrote that piece of it. So I do think that part of it came from Logan himself. I do think that line drawn is Logan's.
I agree. I just think it's an older draft that Frank had access to.
Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, if that is all true, and if they have gone to these lengths, it really frames the Frank Kendall conversation differently as well, because that's always been a kind of like pseudo father-son relationship.
Yeah.
He even calls him son when they're talking on the plane, and Kendall is desperately trying to like figure out how to business the situation. And so like, I was reading that as genuine. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good take. It's really interesting. And if subtitles say princess, then I think that's what it meant. But
that was the thing I kept trying to figure out.
But I'm curious if Succession in its last season would kind of go for the conspiracy route in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think I
can point to any other time where they've done like the kind of the total head fake like that.
But there's such a lack of concreteness to it that I don't think it serves really in that. It's just like this stinging thing for the audience almost. Like, oh my God. And here's the thing about it. It doesn't even have to be stinging is the way I'm putting it for some reason, but like, look, they keep bringing up, like, clearly there was all these different drafts. There was all this confusion. He didn't even file it away with his lawyer. Who knows when he wrote the Shiv one?
Yeah.
You'll remember in season 2, I believe it is, Logan does choose Shiv at one point, and he is telling her directly to her face, you are going to take over for me. This draft could have been written then.
Yeah.
We don't know how long ago it was.
Yeah.
He has kind of picked each of the kids at different times, right?
Totally.
Most recently, Roman, which gets brought up too. So it's like, I mean, not even for the purpose of taking over the company, but for the purpose of maybe being the head of ATN, which is a whole different thing, but they all let it leak into he lets it leak into his mind as if it isn't. So it's just like, rewatch this scene if you don't rewatch the whole episode. I'm talking to everybody here, because my thing that finalized it for me was the last thing Jerry says. Like, Frank shows her the piece of paper too, and they tell her the joke, and she's like, that is a funny joke. And then it cuts away from that scene. And it's like, if her response had been like, no, guys, that's highly illegal, that would be a totally different ballgame. But she clearly is like, yes, I do like that idea, right?
Yeah,
and they're talking in code because none of them can directly say any of this because, bugs, wires, illegality, consequences. So I took that as like those three were on board. We are not showing this draft. This one's going in the toilet. The draft is going to be gone.
Okay. And
then we will figure out another shape.
Well, almost more importantly to that, before we get too far gone, is to mention that Greg is a question-marked penciled addendum on one of these sheets of paper. I just want to make sure we mention that as well, because
yes. Oh, we'll get to that part. Okay, so to move on, Shiv shows us the New York Globe headline and photo with their dad, which reads, "Logan gets the last laugh. Dims fume as world pays tribute. See page 12." And it includes a photo of him with this like huge smile that was probably created by AI. Kendall asks, "Did any of you guys ever see him laugh like that?" And Roman says, "Only if a hobo was on fire." Then Kendall tells his siblings that in the middle of the night he did a talk, like a session that his therapist recommended someone. And he's willing to share the number of this person with his other siblings because, like, it's dumb, but there are actually things you can do. And Shiv says, "Sounds like you've got the best grief guy." And I thought it was a light moment between the two of them because he actually comes back with, like, he smiles and he's like, "I have a great grief guy. Fuck you."
Grief guy.
Then Hugo comes in and informs the kids that the board meeting will now be assembling at noon, so it sounds like it got moved back some, presumably because of this piece of paper that was found and then, in my opinion, discarded. Then Hugo asks to speak with Kendall privately, and this is when he informs him that his daughter just happened to sell, coincidentally, a bunch of Waystar stock just before the news about Logan went public. Total coincidence, Barrett. And Kendall asks Hugo if he spoke to his daughter on that day. And Hugo's like, I cannot recall. He's like, what are the phone records going to say? Why did he tell Kendall this, Barrett?
Yes. Same question. I don't know why the implication is that Kendall could do something for him.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know what Kendall would do for him.
My read is that he knows Kendall is a shitty guy. And he's like, maybe this shitty guy will do something to help me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's gotten through shit before, gotten out of shit before. Like, he's the skeeviest one out of the kids, and maybe he would know an angle, right? Like, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
It was so weird that there were people online saying this whole thing was a setup. Like, that he clearly talked on the phone in front of Kendall on purpose when he was first walking in, and then he, like, brings this to him as a way to set Kendall up for something. But that doesn't really make any sense, especially given the end of this episode where Kendall is able to use this as blackmail. So no. I think it's just that he knows Kendall is shitty and shitty guys identifying with each other. Like, this was clear insider trading. Like, he clearly hit his daughter up, said, I'm going to give you this information. You sell this fucking stock. And then after the fact, in the aftermath, he's realizing, oh my God, I'm going to get caught for this. Like, somebody is going to, like, the SEC is going to notice that somebody unloaded X amount of shares right before this guy's announced death.
Well, okay. So, but think about all the conversations and all the information that we have. I think that he told his daughter that Logan died. I don't think he told her to sell the stock.
Oh, yeah, good point.
The stock.
Yeah, because he's like, you fucked me.
Bitching about her fucking.
Right,
I think it was like he wasn't thinking. Told her about Logan's death. She took that information and was like, I better sell the stock.
Yeah, good point.
That's the only real takeaway, I guess, is that he thinks that Kendall may know a way around this, may know a way to hide it, cover it up, something. He's letting him know. Still doesn't make a ton of sense why he would say this right now. But it obviously serves its purpose as the episode continues.
I guess you could just say Hugo panicked.
Yeah.
And he was like, I need to tell somebody about this. But yeah. So the kids read obituaries and they translate one, the Courier's, where it says, a complicated man, Kendall says, threw phones at staff. It says, sharp reader of the national mood, and Roman translates it to, he's a bit racist. He was very much a man of his era, and Kendall says, again, racist. Also, relaxed about sexual assault. And then business genius, Roman says, never paid a penny in U.S. tax. And then this was the weirdest one, well-connected, and Roman's like, well-connected. Now, that's not fair. I feel like well-connected is generally suggested to be a euphemism for pedophile. And Dad never wanted to, and then like getting that back and forth. And then Kendall's like, he never even hugged his grandkids, right? Yeah. That was just, I guess it was just like mixing in some of the, pedophilia charges against the uber wealthy that have been part of the conspiracy theories of late.
And I mean, just think about like the obvious tie, right? Like think about how many people knew or were photographed or were seen with Epstein.
Yeah, good point.
Like all like, you know.
Almost a direct Jeffrey Epstein little nod there, right?
Yep.
So Tom then tries to make the peace with Kendall by suggesting that the old man's passing cleans the slate between them. And he's sorry for some of the things he said, but he's here to serve. He's here to serve.
Tom, this is the beginning of Tom throwing Hail Marys.
I'm here to serve. Kendall says, I like you, Tom. Good luck. Basically, like, get fucked. Have fun trying to, like, grab onto a life raft somewhere, right? So the kids meet with the old guard, and the old guard tells them that they found a very old piece of paper in Logan's personal safe, at least 4 years old, with penciled-in addendums, and basically they just wanted the kids to be aware of this piece of paper, although it is non-binding and legally irrelevant, because the kids don't have majority voting power, right? So Kendall gets a look at the paper, and this is where the underlined or crossed out argument begins. Shiv asks if maybe the document is essentially moot because it's impossible to decipher, and Ken responds, well, it sure as fucking shit doesn't say Shiv. Which, of course, to me is ironic because the draft they found that could have superseded this one did say Shiv in my head. Greg then gets brought in. They tell him he's on a piece of paper. He's an addendum of miscellaneous matters in pencil with a question mark. Greg goes, nevertheless. So stoked just to be in the conversation, right?
That is big for him.
He then takes a big swing and suggests that, like, well, since Kendall's name is on the piece of paper and then Greg's name is on it with a question mark next to it, I think the natural conclusion is that he would be Kendall's number 2, which gets an out loud laugh out of Frank. Great moment. This is the part where Kendall stays behind with Frank and everybody else leaves, and they have this like back and forth over like whether or not Logan loved Kendall or liked Kendall or was proud of Kendall. And it ends with Kendall saying like, look, if I can get the others behind me, will you follow? Essentially, it's the part of the episode where Kendall is going from person to person that has votes and trying to secure them for himself.
Yep.
Right? Frank tells Kendall in so many words, like, dude, this is the best you've been doing for a while. Do you really want to dive back into these waters? Like, this is, like, you've got something going here. Do you really want to, like, bring the potential of your life unraveling again into the mix just because you might want to go try to secure this company? It was a fair question, and one that Kendall obviously considers for about all of 5 seconds before deciding, yes, he does want to. Tom runs into Shiv on the stairs, and Shiv suggests that the kids killed their dad by forcing him to get on that plane to have to go deal with the Swede in person because they refused to let the Gojo deal go through, right?
Yep.
So she's dealing with this her own version of her own guilt, and then Tom asks Shiv if she remembers the first time they knew one another. It sounded like he was trying to say, like, do you remember the first time we made love in France?
That's what he was saying.
Yeah. And he appears to be trying to rekindle something here. And we're getting into this place where it's like, this is one of the other fun things about this new setup in Succession. I sat there and argued with myself, like, is he genuine or is this just a power play? Is it just about the position and the opportunity, or does he really love Shiv? And I don't know anymore. We've seen too much. I have no clue anymore. Like, where do anybody's loyalties lie?
My own personal read is that he does love Shiv, and that this is, the order, I guess you could take into account that but I also don't think it matters because I think he's going to throw that life raft to every single one of them,
no matter what,
regardless, no matter what, because any of them could end up on top. The reason that it felt genuine to me is because it's a weird, sad lover boy move.
Yeah.
To throw out, remember the first time that we hooked up?
Talking about her shirt.
Her silk shirt. And she said she liked it all.
I kept asking you, do you like that? Do you like that? Do you like that? Which, like, I don't think anybody wants during a hookup, right? The ultimate insecurity.
And so it's
that do you like?
It just didn't feel like I think he could have come at that if it was purely, saving himself. I think he could have come at it from a more strategic position. I think that was a gamble, a risk that he took by bringing that up. She's been kind of like a little like, don't touch me, like get off me. Like she's kind of repulsed by Tom at the moment, it would seem. And so to me, it felt like, kind of I think he was playing a boom or bust card there in a way. But I buy that he loves Shiv and would be up for, rekindling things.
I'm with you. I think this just happened to play both ways, right?
It did,
because he did seem genuine. He says, "Let me show you a kindness," right? He's like, "Come on, stop this bullshit."
Right.
Like, yeah.
To your point, I mean, everything on the show is a manipulation, though, right? That's what these people do.
Yeah,
so.
it is. They're good at it. They're really good at it. All right, to zoom through some of this, Colin shows up in jeans and he doesn't know what to do with his arms. It was fucking hilarious to see because when they give that remark, like Shiv's like, look at him, he doesn't know what to do with himself. Somebody says like he's like a dog without his human now. Mm-hmm. And she says he doesn't know what to do with his arms and he's kind of like got his hands in his back pockets or something. It hit me that everybody carries themselves in such a particular way on this show and in these situations that when you do have somebody who's a little awkward or kind of like out of sorts and like with their arms rubbery or in their back pockets like Colin has here, it stands out and it made me realize that I would never fit in any of these rooms ever. The Secret Service shows up with a dog to do a sweep for Mencken, the fascist presidential candidate who, as Roman puts it, might be president by this time next week. Ron Petkus, who we've met a couple times throughout the course of the series, he's played by Stephen Root, who's in 15 different HBO shows. Ends up giving a speech, which gives Tom the opportunity to start cracking these jokes with Greg, who says like, he reveals that Logan died fishing his iPhone from a clogged toilet that apparently Carl blocked up because he lives on Wonder Bread and steak frites and hadn't had a shit in 20 years.
Okay, now I thought he was just making this all up.
I think this was real.
I think he's cracking jokes.
I thought it was real. It made me, you know where my mind immediately went? Oh my God, he was listening to Roman's voicemail and it caused him to die. He heard the voicemail while he was taking a piss on the toilet. The voicemail was so infuriating that he dropped the phone in the toilet. He's trying to flush it out, but Carl's blocked it up with his steak frites and Wonder Bread diet, and then he dies. I'm taking it literally.
I'm surprised at how theory heavy you were watching this episode.
I think episode 3 it put me in this place, man.
Yeah.
Fucked me up.
Because Greg, when he returns the serve a little bit and says something like his joke is terrible.
They said he like shaped the country, and Greg says into the shape of a dick.
The shape of a dick.
Tom's like, come on, that's tasteless, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That one could go either way to me. Like either Tom was just being funny.
Yeah.
Doing some barbing.
Either way, great volleying from the Disgusting Brothers there.
Very fun stuff. Disgusting Brothers. Sandy and Stewie show up and they give their condolences. And the senior Sandy is there too with a permanent smile on his face. So Kendall immediately starts working Stroke Sandy for his board vote. And the old man does not know who he is. He asks him, "Who are you? And why is everyone at the sex party so sad?" Which is another one of those lines where it's like you could take what Kendall said as literally, or like, was he just implying that the old guy's completely out of it and doesn't know what's happening?
Yeah.
Carrie shows up and wants to get some things from upstairs, some of her things from upstairs. This was a big scene. Marcia had already collected those things from upstairs and put them into a bag, will not allow Carrie upstairs. Security has to stop her. Roman comes over to console her and repeatedly asks for her private number, which I thought I read as him trying to possibly bang his dead dad's girlfriend.
It definitely crossed my mind. How could it not? This is Roman Roy that we're talking about.
Right? He's a perv.
But I also, you mentioned it early in the episode. There is a softness towards Carrie from the kids in this episode.
Yes.
And I don't totally know what to make of it yet. Carrie has some lines here about like how they were talking about getting married and he was supposed to tell his lawyer and he was going to write a note about it.
Yes.
And that's what she wants to get upstairs to search around for, obviously, is like to see if she can find some type of note or proof. Sadly for her, I am fairly certain that the entire house has been swept by Marcia for anything like this, probably specifically looking out for some bullshit like this.
Absolutely.
And is gone if it did exist. But I don't think we've seen the last of Carrie. That was my read from this scene because it's too empathetic. It's too soft. The way that Roman is helping her pick up her things, asking for the private number, the way that they're talking about Carrie, the way that we know that they don't really like Marcia. I don't know. I think it's coming back.
I think she's toast.
She might be toast. I just don't think we've seen the last of her.
Marcia says we're calling her a taxi to the subway so that she can go home to her little apartment.
Cold as fuck.
It was so brutal, dude.
Meanwhile, Greg just buttering the toast over there. Oh, here come the waterworks.
Oh, Greg was great.
Just speaking of succubuses.
Yeah. If you've got dogs, don't treat them like Tom and Shiv treat Mondale. Use today's sponsor, Maeve. Did you know that a dog eating kibble every single day is like a human consuming a diet of 100% processed foods? No matter your species, fillers, additives, and synthetics are not optimal sources of nutrition. Enter Maeve Raw Food for Dogs, formulated by PhD veterinary nutritionists with real human-grade ingredients. You can name them just by looking at them. Plus, it's bite-sized and ready for your dog to eat right out of the bag. No mess, no prep. Just open, pour, and enjoy. I've got 4 dogs at home. I love them as much as I love my kids. I want them to have the best. I'm sure you do with your dogs too. Dogs need unprocessed, high-protein, low-carb diets that kibble and fresh foods don't deliver. Maeve is a protein-rich raw food for dogs that's just as easy as kibble, and it's supplemented for 7 essential health benefits, including gut health, immune function, oral hygiene, skin and coat health, hip and joint health, mental health and anxiety, and growth and early development. People love Maeve. They have over 1,000 5-star reviews, and so do their dogs, especially notoriously picky eaters. They love Maeve. Make the switch to raw today. Right now, Maeve is offering $40 off your first order at meetmaeve.com/dragon. Go to meetmaeve.com/dragon. That's spelled meetmaev.com/dragon to receive $40 off your first order. Once more, that's meetmaeve.com/dragon. So, last part of the episode here. Tom approaches Roman and brings up the piece of paper situation, which he has already heard about from Greg. Clearly, they're still operating as a team. And he tells Roman that clearly his dad wanted him to take over. He's here to serve, Barrett. Lip balm, Tom Wom, lubing up his lips to kiss my butt.
Yeah. Amazing line.
As funny as Roman's rebuttals are here, it's very clear that he is moved by Tom's suggestion that Logan might want him to take over, and Tom is very clearly sowing dissent amongst these kids, right? I think it's still about, like, chaos being a ladder, right? To make it about Littlefinger. That's just where I'm at. I know.
Yeah, look. Is it sowing dissent? Yes, it is functionally doing that. Is that the intent behind Tom? That wasn't my read. My read was more he was just like filing these cards away with each of them.
I think you're right.
For whoever comes out on top here.
I think you're right.
Because here's the thing. When the kids get in that room, no matter what was said to them over the course of this particular day, none of them are just going to quietly be like, yes, I support you and your valiant effort. I think it should be you. I want nothing in return. You are the one for this job.
I will step back.
Yeah, like
no, you're right, dude.
So
I think you're right. I concede that for sure. But Tom's just playing cards at each spot.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's putting chips down on all of the roulette numbers.
So Kendall meets with Stewie and tells him about this piece of paper that he saw, and he asks Stewie to get on his side as far as board voting goes. He then approaches Shiv and Roman after fighting to get their attention because they go into the classic Succession mode where Kendall is walking up and he's like, let's get this, like, let's have a conversation. And they're all just deflecting and like bringing up other shit. And then for once, he's like, guys, like, come on, let's not give it to the Keystone fucks just because we didn't want to talk, right? So they end up going back and forth in this room, Kendall, Roman, and Shiv. And they agree to, and I was shocked that Shiv ended up getting on board with this.
Yeah.
They agree to a 2-headed monster with Kendall and Roman, but no Shiv, which again, to me, is ironic because I'm pretty sure that Logan named Shiv on that piece of paper in the toilet. And Roman was basically able to argue this because he is a COO, a chief operating officer, right? So that him and Kendall are on the same plane as far as Waystar C-suite executives go. And they say it like, doesn't make sense to have 3 people. 3 is a weird orgy. 2 is fucking,
3
right?
Gets a little wonky.
Does get a little, it's a wonky shape, Barrett. He doesn't think the board will approve it, which is funnier when you see who the board consists of. It's like, they're like half of it. These 3,
right.
Like, they're like, what do you mean? Just convince them. And anyway, so he doesn't see the board being okay with just Kendall ascending to CEO. He thinks it would need to be both of them. Roman weasels his way in there. Kendall concedes. Like, it doesn't have to be just me. And then they promise Shiv that they won't fuck her and that she'll be inside everything and will be across everything.
You got to be inside and across. That's important. Yeah.
So then Shiv makes them promise on their dad yesterday.
On yesterday.
And they all agree. So in the end, the old guard and the kids meet, Stewie included. He just kind of gets swept up in there, and they debate who will step up. And during this meeting, Frank asks Roman the last time he spoke with his dad. And he's like 48 hours ago. And he's like, yeah? And how'd that go? Which takes me back to the theory, dude. I'm telling you, because I swear to God, Frank knows something about Roman's voicemail.
Okay.
Maybe it was the last thing Logan ever heard. Just throwing it out there.
Could have been.
In the end, Ken and Roman step up from COO. Everyone agrees to that. And this is where the rest of my theory about the piece of paper shit came into to be finished up. Because why would the old guard agree to this? I just think I guess it's your point, right? That this will get the Gojo deal through, right? But I also think that as a part of that, they know, well, if one of us does want to be the one to take the reins, like these two morons are going to be done in a week, right? As soon as the deal is through, we can discard of these idiots and somebody else can take the top spot, right? I don't know. I just think that might be part of it. Shiv takes a tumble. She falls down, which is obviously concerning because we know she's pregnant.
Yep.
Then Kendall and Roman meet with Carolina and Hugo to discuss PR strategy. We find out Logan did Sudoku. Roman concerningly downs some random pills off of his dad's desk. I thought he was doing Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
Getting a handful of Tic Tacs. That was whatever medication his dad had on his desk. Hugo explains that there are two ways to go. One, they get out a nice package of photos of Kendall and Roman with Logan. Look, it's his kids, the sons. It's going to be the same as it was before, right? They're going to do what Logan Roy did to the letter. Option two is more complex. It's more fresh start, stressing that they were already more heavily involved in the decision-making, that essentially the old man had started to slip.
Yep.
He was giving up power already to these two, and it kind of gets turned into Operation Shit on Dad is what Roman calls it, right? So Roman and Kendall together in this room decide on the not shitting on their dad angle. Then the very final scene of the episode is Kendall going to Hugo and telling him directly to do the shitting all over his dad angle, the bad dad PR stuff, or he will take out the strap-on that was referenced in the call with the insider trading daughter.
Yep.
So it has to be done soft, no prints, which there's always lines like this where I'm like, what was just said? And without a rewatch where I can be like, oh, okay, so he means no evidence that they are behind it by no prints, no fingerprints. Soft meaning with, subtle tact, right? So don't be an ass about this. No Carolina or Roman to sign off on this. He's directly blackmailing Hugo for whatever dumbass reason Hugo decided to tell him about the insider trading thing. And then we get this classic Succession moment where Kendall smiles. And then it's bam, right to the credits. And all of that said and done, that's the thing, man. When they have these Succession moments, like that smile, that's a good episode of TV, bro. This stacked on top of episode 3, to me, was maybe the best 2-episode run in the history of the show so far.
And this type of stuff that clearly maybe some people online bumped on, it's it's why this show could have gone 7 or 8 seasons, just continuing to break the wheel and then put it back together again.
Yeah.
Right? It could have done that if it had wanted to. I've never watched it, but I kind of assume that's what Billions basically did.
I have to assume.
Right? And so
it does seem like it's the same two guys fighting every season.
And that would have been fun, and I would have continued to watch. Maybe returns would have been diminished a little bit. I'm sure they would have, but it's so well cast, it's so well written, and there are so many different ways and combinations that they can move all these pieces around that I think they absolutely could have gone that way if they wanted to, and the show would have been successful for many, many seasons. But to get these types of things happening at the same time that we know we're headed to some sort of larger statement and conclusion about this chapter of this company, I love that we're gonna get both, and that we still get these kind of classic Succession moments. We talked a couple weeks ago about how I think we both kind of maybe empathize with Kendall a little bit, maybe have cheered for him in the past. I think it's really interesting. You are a noted Shiv supporter as far as who you think could do the job. I think that Roman has shown a lot of prowess and relationship management and being able to talk to people like Mattson and kind of like schmooze a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I think Kendall is the most shark-like of the three of them. I think he is the most, I think he is the most equipped to make the kind of cutthroat decisions that, as he says, that Logan would have made.
Yeah.
His own personal shortcomings and addiction issues and bullshit and daddy issues, like, are always going to get in the way of him, I think, successfully pulling it off. But this was another one of those moments where, for me, it's kind of like, fuck yeah.
Let's go, Kendall.
Like, let's go, Kendall.
He's back.
Let's go, Ken.
He's back.
Yeah.
No, that moment with him in the bathroom by himself looking at the phone, which was the screenshot or the photo he took of the contract with his name underlined, crossed out, right? I took that as like a what would dad do moment. And that's when he's like, I always go back to the line. He's like, you're not a killer. You've got to be a killer.
You're not a killer, son.
This is a killer.
Yeah.
This is what a killer would do. This is what his dad would do. He even tells him directly, like you said, he's like, Hugo, this is what he would want for the firm. This is what dad would do.
He would want for the firm.
Right? So it's like, I think it was also wrapped up in that, like, what my dad would do is blackmail the fuck out of you, and that's what I'm doing right here, right? So it's like double entendre. But I loved that. I loved the full circle nature of this thing. Yeah, I mean, I always think from like a business perspective, Shiv would make the most sense.
Yeah.
Mostly because of the arguments presented in the first two seasons, but like from a who am I rooting for standpoint,
Yep.
no, I'm still this guy. Like the original sicko is who I want up on the top of this thing when it's all said and done, man. Like, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I do agree with you though. I think that all the kids have shown different things at different points, right? In terms of what would make them good for the job. At least on some level.
Right.
Maybe not good for the job, most suited for it or whatever.
Yeah, let's not forget, I think we're both also in agreement that for all three of them, their lack of general self-awareness is like what makes them, in Logan's words, not serious people.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's going to be exciting to see where things go from here. I thought I was so hyped to see the momentum from last episode put out here in a useful way and to like continue, keep the ball rolling sort of. So we will be back, as we always are, later in the week on Thursday on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. If you are looking for more coverage of Succession's final season, Barrett and I do an exclusive ad-free episode every single week, driven by hotline calls from the Oyster Clamco board members on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. Support our sponsors. We'd appreciate it if all season long you'd support our sponsors by using our dedicated URLs and codes. That is how we pay the piper here at Oyster Clamco. Today we have a new sponsor, Factor. Use code OCC50 at factormeals.com/OCC50 to get 50% off your first order. And Mave, go to meetmave.com/dragon for $40 off your first order so your dogs can eat like they deserve. Links and codes for today's sponsors in the description of this episode. Follow Barrett at Barrett Dudley on Instagram and Twitter. Follow me at WR Bolin on Instagram and Twitter. Go to bolinmedia.com/shop to grab yourself some merch. For those of you who are supporting the show on Patreon, we'll be back Thursday. Looking forward to those calls. Cannot wait to discuss this one further and hear what you think about my crazy theories.
This is the Patreon episodes. I think they're getting better every week, where we have more and more to discuss, more phone calls coming in, more hotline calls, thanks to all of the board members and stockholders out there. But yeah, this last final run, if you're not in there already, now's the time.
Get in there. A lot of value. A lot of shape for everybody.
A lot of shape for
Patreon,
everybody.
man.
I think you'll really find a shape for yourself. There.
Yeah. Season 1 of House of the Dragon is on there as well. Our bonus coverage of that and The White Lotus, as well as Barrett and I's entire companion podcast for The Sopranos. Go to patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles today. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on youtube.com/@oysters, clams, cockles. And until next time, fuck off.